What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of I'm sorry if you can hear my air conditioner in the background, but it is 90 degrees outside, and I'm not trying to melt in this chair. As always, I'm your host, Zach Cronin, and today I have a hyper original piece of content for you, something that has never been done ever before. The internet has been around for many years. Its meteoric rise has produced tons of trends and just so many ideas for people to use. And in this one, my entirely original idea is an NBA commentator tier list. That's
Bruh.
right. Never been done before. I guarantee you can go to YouTube right now, type in NBA commentator tier list, and it will populate nothing because nobody has ever done this before. Of course, this is a joke. Everyone has done one of these fucking things. And at this point, I don't have anything else to talk about. I don't want to get into the summer league. Damian Lillard is still in Portland as it stands and may very well be in Portland until Labor Day at this rate. I don't want to talk about the offseason because it's still technically going on, even though a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, for example, did have a very good offseason. This is like really me waving the white flag of boredom. I just need to create something. I need to put something online to satisfy the narcissistic urge that is bubbling within me. And I thought, what better topic than NBA commentators? Because they are a contentious bunch among the NBA viewership community. For every Mike Breen and Iron Eagle, there is a Reggie Miller and there is a Chris Webber. I'm not trying to diminish the role that these guys have. I'm not trying to downplay the difficulty of this job because it is exceptionally challenging to be able to react in real time to what's going on during an NBA basketball game is a task that not many people can do. I pre-record all my shit and I still struggle to string sentences together. However, with all of that being said, these guys that we see on TNT, these guys that we see on ESPN, they are the best. They are the representatives that the NBA wants to help grow the sport. And sometimes they just do not reach that standard. I'm not trying to compare, but watching Tony Romo on CBS, I feel that is the gold standard for really any level of sports commentary. Of course, football is different than basketball. You have all the pre snap reads that you can do, but of course, that is all sport dependent. I'd say that being a play by play guy and an analyst are just as hard, and they have two distinctly different jobs. The play by play guy is responsible for being charismatic, for being energetic, for making people feel excited about the game while also being aware of everything that is going on, being aware of the current like foul situation for each team, being aware of the current 3 point situation for each team, just being able to also spoon feed little nuggets that they're fed by the producers. And to do that in real time, again, is exceptionally difficult. Being an analyst, on the other hand, is not necessarily a harder job because I think the degree of difficulty is about the same in just different ways, as I previously mentioned. The analyst's role is to educate the fan. That is really what we want when we put on TNT or, you know, ESPN or whatever. We want to learn something. We want to learn about how Steph Curry gets open on these drag screens and pin downs. We want to learn how LeBron James sees the floor. And ultimately, that doesn't really happen that frequently. And what sucks is that if you're not going to be educational, you have to at least be entertaining. I found this especially being in the online space. Whenever you are performing for an audience and getting in front of the camera, whether it's for a TikTok, whether it's for a YouTube video, it is a performance. You have to bring something to the table. It's got to be insightful. It's got to be funny. Like, you have to make the viewer feel something. And more often than not, those two boxes fall into either education or entertainment. And as we're going to see on this list, there are a couple of these guys that to me just simply do not get up to the task, but I've been rambling too much. I'm already 5 minutes into this shit. Let's go ahead and get this started. First up on the list, we have the man, the myth, the legend, the Providence College god himself, Jeff Van Gundy, who was recently just let go by ESPN. ESPN did a whole wave of layoffs where they eliminated some of their most recognizable on-air personality. Jeff Van Gundy is a very interesting person because there are two iterations of him. There is regular season Van Gundy and there is postseason Van Gundy. Postseason Van Gundy, I would go out on a limb and say, is one of the better commentators in the league. He's very knowledgeable. His experience coaching brings a different approach to the analysis just because when you are a coach, you are inherently trying to make the game simpler for the team and seeing things that they don't see, which works great for the viewer. He's very knowledgeable, even very funny at times. That is, of course, a different side of Van Gundy that we get during the regular season where it'll be like 90 seconds to go in the fourth quarter of a 3-point game, but this game is between the Charlotte Hornets and Washington Wizards. And while this clutch performance is going on, Jeff Van Gundy is talking about the time that he got embarrassed in 5th grade at the lunch table because he couldn't peel the skin off of his orange. And he sat there for the whole lunch period trying to get the skin off of his orange. And it wasn't until 30 seconds before the bell rang that the lunch lady came over, dug her nails into that piece of citrus, and de-skinned it for him. And as he's telling this story, the game just comes to a close. So I don't believe he's S tier because there's a little too much inconsistency for my liking, but I still think that overall he's a very good commentator, and I'm going to take him at his best in the playoffs. Jeff Van Gundy, to me, is an A tier commentator. Next up on this list, we have Marv Albert, the most legendary toupee in the history of I don't even want to say sports media. I want to say in sports as a whole. For many of you younger fans, myself included, you only remember Marv Albert as the guy who confused Andre Iguodala and Kevin Durant, as the guy who called David Wesley, who hadn't been in the league since like 2005. I don't remember the specifics of this one, but he was talking about Miles Turner and I think mentioned LaFonso Ellis. Don't know how the fuck that happened. But before that, Marv Albert, before he developed dementia on air, Marv Albert was one of the premier commentators in sports. And I don't want to say regardless of his checkered past, because if you don't, just type into Google Marv Albert 1997 and you'll understand why he's kind of a fucking scumbag. But just taking his commentary as a whole, like back in the 90s, calling Knicks games, talking about Bernard King, stuff like that, he was elite. But fuck all that, because I wasn't alive during that. So I'm going to go with my most recent memory of Marv Albert. And this guy was unlistenable. Didn't know who the fuck was who on the court. Had no idea about any player's stats during the game. He would say like Draymond Green just picks up his first personal when it was his third. Or that James Harden is 3 of 7 from 3 when he was actually 3 of 4. So with all of that included, he's going into the D category. He's ass. Straight up. Fuck Marv Albert. Now we have Mark Jones. Mark Jones is gaining newer prominence with a much larger role calling ESPN games. Him and Doris Burke are a treat to listen to. I think that he is a very, very good play-by-play guy. Every game he calls, he is super excited. It's childlike enjoyment from him. I can feel it through the television. When I went to the Basketball Hall of Fame a couple of months ago, it was probably one of the happiest moments I had ever been. I felt like an actual child. That is the same kind of energy I get from Mark Jones. I don't think that he is one of the better play-by-play guys quite yet. I don't believe him to be on like Mike Breen's level, for example, or Kevin Harlan's level. And the one thing that I personally find a little hard to listen to with him is ESPN brought him on, I think, to attract a younger audience because he is a younger guy, keeps his ear to social media or keeps his eyes on social media. Some of the references that he drops do feel a little bit contrived and a little bit forced and a little like, how do you do, fellow kids? But beyond that, like, that's just a personal preference for me. He does have a couple great calls as well, like Deep in His Bag, like There Are Fries at the Bottom is one of the best calls that you can drop on air as the telecast is cutting to a commercial with the replay going in the background. I am going to drop him in the B tier only because I want to see how the rest of his career plays out. I want to see what his potential is because I don't think he's reached that yet. I think there's still a lot of growth for him as a commentator. And now, following that, we have Reggie Miller, probably one of the most despised commentators in sports. And I could see why. I really just don't enjoy listening to Reggie Miller. He is insightful from time to time, but just doesn't bring the same level of knowledge like a JJ Redick does. For example, JJ Redick to me is very much the NBA's Tony Romo or ESPN's Tony Romo, a guy who understands what is happening 2, 3 plays ahead and is able to not only absorb that information, but regurgitate it onto the audience in a concise manner and in educational manner at that. With Reg, as I just mentioned, he does have brief moments of insight, but they're very few and far between. He also really doesn't bring anything to the table. He doesn't have any signature catchphrases or anything. I just find him sometimes unbearable to listen to. I think that he's arguably a better actor than he is NBA commentator, and this is just going off of his short portfolio of him being in Wendy's breakfast commercial. So I'm dropping him into a C. Now we are coming to one of the heavy hitters, Mike Breen, Mr. Bang himself. There is no doubt about it. Mike Breen is the best play-by-play guy in the NBA at this moment and is arguably the best play-by-play guy in sports. The only, reluctance I have is that I don't see Mike Breen really call anything else. He doesn't have the same versatility as Kevin Harlan, for example, who does March Madness, who does the NBA, who sometimes does NFL. But Mike Breen is the best that the NBA has to offer. Incredible resume. I sometimes put on Knicks games just to listen to Mike and Clyde go back and forth. Signature catchphrases. Like I cannot envision an NBA Finals game without hearing Mike Breen's bang when someone hits a three. It is one of the greatest calls in sports. It's one of the greatest calls in sports that we have today. And Mike Breen, undeniably S tier. Now we're on to Chris Webber. I don't have any memories of Chris Webber because he is simply unmemorable. I can't recall the last time I actually heard him on a telecast, and I wonder if that's a reason. I wonder if there's a reason for that because much like Reggie Miller, just does not bring anything to the table. I'm not going to drop him into the D tier because I don't think there is anyone worse than Marv Albert because at the very least, Chris Webber is at least coherent and knows that he is calling an NBA basketball game in whatever fucking year he's asked to call it. But he doesn't do much. He doesn't do much for me. I actually think that Reggie Miller is better than he is. Next up, Richard Jefferson. Richard Jefferson is among the newer crop of on-air talent for ESPN. JJ Redick himself, Kendrick Perkins, all of these guys are making their rounds, whether it's on television shows, whether it's appearances on respective broadcasts. I don't have an issue with RJ. I think he's a fine commentator. I don't think that he is really remarkable. I don't want to say that because he is remarkable at drawing the ire of Knicks fans. And what I'm really trying to say is he's good. He's not the best, not the worst. I feel that he is a comfortable B tier. RJ, to me, is very inoffensive, unless, of course, you are a Knicks fan. But he's on the air. He's having fun. He's dropping little, bits of knowledge here and there. Seems like an intelligent basketball mind, but again, doesn't jump out at me in either way. I feel that he is maybe the line for NBA commentary. Like he's not the most mid, but he is again like in the middle, not mid, but in the middle, if that makes any sense. Next up, Kevin Harlan. This man is right up there with Mike Breen. Incredible commentator. Just overall incredible commentator, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, whether he's calling the playoffs on TBS and he's doing play-by-play of a cat running onto the field. Like, he is just so locked in all the time. Great voice, great inflection. It is an actual performance from Kevin Harlan when he's in the broadcast box. Like, him and Mike Breen really are the standard. Like, any young commentator trying to break into that field, trying to get on TV, or is going to broadcast journalism school, whatever. Mike Breen and Kevin Harlan, I would reckon that they're being taught in media classes because, again, they are just the gold standard. Next up, we have Doris Burke, another immensely talented commentator. I think A tier, as you can see. I put her ahead of Jeff Van Gundy because I do think that she is better than Jeff Van Gundy. She is probably what JVG would be if he were locked in all the time. Van Gundy has been around the game of basketball for fucking ever, I feel like, and that has created not like a sense of nihilism, but a sense of agnosticism towards how he is perceived by audiences because he's well respected in NBA circles. He's always being considered for coaching jobs, even like however many years after he's retired. And I think that not that he's become complacent, but very much in the sense that how tenured professors begin to act a certain way once they know nothing can happen to them. I mean, even though he just recently got canned, he got canned not based on performance, based on fucking quote unquote reducing redundancies or some shit. But Doris Burke, with her intelligence, her charisma, her articulation, I think is again what Jeff Van Gundy could be if he weren't again stressing about the one time that he was in second grade and he was during recess, took the frisbee and threw it at the girl that he had a crush on, and it hit her in the head and lacerated her forehead, and she had to get 37 stitches. If he weren't going on these weird tangents throughout the regular season, I think he would be much higher up on this list. But yeah, Doris Burke is a comfortable A tier for me. We now have my personal favorite commentator, Ian Eagle. Ian Eagle is the regular play-by-play guy for the Brooklyn Nets. Also works with March Madness, gets some NBA calls every now and then, works with CBS as well to call football on Sunday from time to time. Just, again, great commentator. A plethora of catchphrases, so many that I can't even remember. Oh, like Rack Attack, that is a huge one. All the, niche references he's made to Jared Allen and D'Angelo Russell, Kevin Durant, he's always constantly innovating his commentary style and, also does a really great job of bouncing off of Sarah Kustok, for example, when they do broadcasts for the Nets. Again, just a fantastic commentator, one who is comfortably S tier for me. We have three more on this list. These final three are basketball legends as far as their on-court performances go. Clyde Frazier is next up. Also a basketball legend in regards to his outfits, is by far the drippiest commentator of this bunch. I mean, even in this little thumbnail you can see, we got this bright blue tie with the handkerchief to match, pink shirt, nice contrast between the shirt and the tie, got almost a cotton candy vibe going on to it with the light blazer as well. Just, again, drip god. I don't know if they're teaching Clyde in sports broadcasting classes. I sure know for a fact that they should be teaching him in fashion classes because this guy simply does not miss. Unfortunately, his commentary, I don't think, lives up to the same level of his outfits. This might be a little bit of a hot take. I think that Clyde Frazier is a worse commentator than Jeff Van Gundy, better than Mark Jones because, again, his wordplay on the broadcast, I think, is enough to bump him into the A tier. Signature catchphrases, his use of the word percolating, which is one of my favorite words, just very unique broadcast style that doesn't come around that often. There is no more unique broadcaster. There's no more unique analyst than Walt Frazier, even though he might not have the, I don't want to say that he doesn't have the basketball knowledge, but although it's a different style than someone like JJ Redick, for example, he is tremendously unique. I'm going to go ahead, drop him into A tier. We're coming up on the final two. Mark Jackson. I don't think he's good in the booth. He does not bring anything to the table. I will say his out-of-pocketness would bump him up if we were doing like a meme tier list because I will never forget watching the finals live. I forget when it was. I think it was 2017 or 2018. LeBron is coming down the park. He's coming. LeBron is. I just had a fucking Freudian slip. LeBron is coming down the court, and Mark Jackson says that he would knock Savannah James out of the park with all due respect. And as he gets done saying this, LeBron cans a three, and Mike Breen goes bang. One of the most insane moments I've ever encountered on an NBA broadcast, but beyond that, just not very good as a commentator. He does have his signature catchphrases, "Mama, there goes that man, hand down, man down," but those are like 117 years old. I'm gonna do him. Whoa, pause. But lastly, we have Hubie Brown. Hubie Brown, very interesting character, is very much like the grandfather of all of the commentators. When my grandfather was still alive, him telling me stories about Oscar Robertson, about Bill Russell, about like just the old timey NBA, about Jerry West, stuff like that. That is the vibe I get from listening to Hubie Brown. It's very nostalgic, but again, he is also a very bright guy. This like, and he's old, man. He's an old man, and he's still sharp. He still brings it on the broadcast. I do think that his commentary style is very like old school teachery, because it just seems like every time he starts, he's like, okay, now look at this here. Now what you're gonna see is, and then he'll explain the play, and it's like, goddamn, Hubie, that is like, you're still fucking on point. Like your brain is firing at an unprecedented level. Like he could probably commentate until he's 93 years old. I'm gonna go ahead. I don't want to put him in the B tier because actually, you know what? Nah, I'm putting Hubie above Jeff Van Gundy. The big knock against JVG is that he's just so fucking pessimistic a lot of the time that like no one cares. No one cares. And if you are gonna go on these tangents, don't go on the tangent with fucking 37 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Go on the tangent at 9 minutes into the first when LeBron is 1 of 6, or Steph is like 0 for 3, or Draymond is facilitating and being the centerpiece of the offense because Steph and Clay are hurt. But this is my tier list. I think that this is fair. Again, just my opinion though. But I do think that the S tier, I don't really feel that anyone on the internet is going to argue with this S tier. Mike Breen, Kevin Harlan, and Ian Eagle are the best in the business, and they are safe locks at that position. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. Everything that I'm associated with is down in the description box below: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Leave a like on this video if you like to subscribe to the channel so you can catch future videos. Also comment for the algorithm. It helps out tremendously with that. Thanks again. I'll catch y'all in the next one.